Let's call the meeting to order this evening. Kathy will be preparing it. I didn't either. Nobody wanted to talk to us. There's nothing controversial, apparently. And everybody's happy. Okay. So, shall we open the meeting with Joe Garkovich with the invocation from First Christian Church? Please rise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. God of creation, we thank you for another day. As this group gathers to do this important work, we pray that you would grant them wisdom and knowledge, clarity of the issues, and the ability to hear with an open mind and an open heart. And all these prayers we send to you in Christ's name. Amen.
Well, thank you all. Would you please call the roll?
Mayor Troutman.
Here.
Council members Smith.
Here.
Ekstrom.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Gill.
Here.
Weed.
Here.
Meisner.
Here.
Councilmember Shiraki is excused. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I would like to call for the approval of the minutes from the February the 15th regular Canyon City Council meeting and the February 2nd, February 17th Public Works Committee meeting. Are there any corrections?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Let me find it. I was trying to find it first, but in the administrator's report, somewhere I read that it said in the last sentence that the police chief had responded to the traffic issue. I remember him talking about the marijuana, but I don't remember him talking about.
I remember you posing a question about increased traffic, and I believe Doug ended up asking the chief to respond to that.
I provided that in an email to.
Okay, that's in response to the email. Okay.
Okay, that doesn't call for correction, just a clarification.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Meisner. Are there any other questions, comments, or corrections? Then I will call for a motion from council. Mr. Meisner?
Sure. I move that we approve the minutes from the 2:15 regular council meeting and from the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting on 2/17/16.
Second.
Second. Mr. Ekstrom? Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you. Are there any council member announcements at this time? Mr. Weed?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to inform the public that there will be a General Government Committee meeting on this Wednesday, March 9th, in the room adjacent to this one at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Ekstrom.
Yes, thank you. Unless Doug had intended to have it later in the administrator report, we've asked Mike Nislanik to come in and give a brief presentation.
Have him do that for the administrator's report.
Okay. So then I have nothing at this moment.
Anyone else? And then the mayor would like to make an announcement that the Coffee with the Mayor will be at 8 o'clock on the 11th at Good Time Cafe. So please come out and have coffee. Okay, I need to go for the adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda. Doug, would you want to review the consent agenda items?
Yes, the first item on the consent agenda for tonight is to authorize the mayor's signature on a license agreement. This would be with Colorado Jeep and Off-Road Tours, which is owned by Will Colin. Will had previously approached the city back a few years ago, and the city had approved a license agreement for the purposes of operating Jeep tours in various city-owned parks. That agreement, the most recent agreement, expired December 31st of 15, and this agreement, if renewed by the City Council, would allow that activity to continue for one more year with the term expiring December 31st of 2016. This was reviewed at the February 17th Public Works Committee and recommended at that time. Excuse me. Next item is a service contract with the Pueblo City and County Health Department. This is an item that we do every year, usually at this time. We discussed this at the February 17th Public Works Committee, and this is for the annual testing of drinking water, which is a federal requirement, and this would be in an amount not to exceed $9,600. And again, this is a routine item that we typically do every year with at the water department to make sure that we are testing our water properly for the benefit of all of our residents. Next item is resolution number 7 of 2016. This was recommended at the February 17th Public Works Committee, and if this is adopted, this resolution would appoint and authorize a team, and this team is made up of people both within the city government and then outside experts as well with respect to refinancing the water treatment COPs. We discussed that at the February 17th Public Works Committee and demonstrated to the City Council that significant savings could be made by refinancing these COPs at this time. Next item is item number 12 of 16. This is for the purchase of 645 radio read registers for the Water Department. This will be to Finish Line Systems of Lakewood, Colorado, in the amount of $124,123.80. This was reviewed at the February 17th Public Works Committee. It was recommended at that time. This will be for the purchase of these radio read registers, which will be utilized to upgrade our existing water meters within our system so that they would all be radio read. In other words, so that they wouldn't have to have a person going out every time to read it. This would be for the water department. This is a sole source bid, and the funds for this purchase have been included in the 2016 budget. Item number 13 of 16, related to the previous purchase, is for Neptune. It's called an R900 data collector for the Water Department to Finish Line Systems of Lakewood, Colorado, in the amount of $9,818.30. Again, this was recommended at the February 17th Public Works Committee. And this is for the purchase of a data collector that would be deployed on the east side of town. We have others in other parts of the city. This one would be on the east side of town, and it would be a system that would actually pick up that data from the radio read meters and then transfer that data to a system that already is existing at the Water Department. That information then, once it's sorted, is sent on to the Finance Department, at which time it is billed out to the users on the system. So this system, this radio read data collector, is helping us to finish up this radio read system in our water department. Next item is number 17 of 16, bid number 17. This is for Husqvarna asphalt concrete saw for the street division. This will be to True Value Hardware in Canyon City in the amount of $23,899. This is for the purchase of a particular saw, specialized saw that would allow the department to do deep enough cuts in asphalt and concrete to be able to complete the repairs on our streets. There were 5 bids that were received. This particular bidder was actually the second lowest bidder, but as you know, we have a 5% local preference factor in our purchasing policies. So that would make this bidder the low bidder for this particular item. And again, this budget was included, or this expense was included in our 2016 budget. And then lastly, our list of bills for the last 2-week payable period.
Thank you, Doug. Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion and a second?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda or accept it.
The agenda and the consent agenda? Is that what you said?
I believe that there was a proposal to have an executive session this evening. If that's the case, we would need to amend the agenda to include that.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah, we'll need to have an executive session at the end of the meeting tonight, so we'll want to
motion would need to be to amend it to add an executive session, if you so choose to.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we amend the consent agenda following this meeting.
If that was a motion, I'll
Is that
second.
the motion
It
seconded?
was a motion.
Would you call the roll, please?
Adding that executive session as item number 11, for those following on the agenda. Okay, Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
And Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you. Is there an administrator's report? Doug?
I only have one item for tonight, and I think that the city council had asked Mike Nieslanik if he could come in and talk a little bit about the search process for the city administrator. And so, Mike, if you'd like to step up to the podium and kind of fill everyone in, and this is also information for the general public as well that might be interested, so it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I want to take this opportunity, if I might, to thank each of you for the amount of service you're giving the community. It's a big commitment, sometimes not a lot of rewards, surely not a lot of pay. So thank you very much from this citizen, and I'm sure many, many others.
Thank you.
I thought this evening what I might do is walk through the process that we've put together, although it's not hard and fast, because sometimes dates change a little bit. But you have in your packet a couple items. One is a timeline, and I'd like kind of to walk through a brief version of that timeline. And then the second is kind of a description of the different kinds of activities that will be occurring in that timeline.
Mike, would it be appropriate to ask you for what you do, what brings you here to do this? Would that be appropriate?
A little background on myself?
Yeah, most of us know you, but maybe some don't.
Sure. I am retired to start with, so I do have a little bit of time. I was the Director of Human Resources for Canyon City Schools for 8 years. I worked for the system for approximately 33 years in administrative roles. I was involved in the hiring of numerous principals, one superintendent, and countless numbers of teachers over the course of those years. Where I derive my background from is a lot of the models that are used in the employment of superintendents of schools. And that's the foundation that I work from as I begin to work with the council on developing a process. It's tweaked a little bit, maybe a lot in some cases, but that's the foundation that I work with.
Thank you,
Did I
Mike.
get it?
Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm going to just walk through the process then to hit the highlights and the dates that go with them so you have a sense of what's happening and when it's happening. The first, let me get these on, is that the position for the city administrator has been posted. It was posted on the 17th of February. It's been posted with a pretty broad net, including state, national, and local. And it was done through the Human Resources Department here with the city. The closing for the application, initial applications, is the 25th of March. That's on a Friday. As of this afternoon, we have 21 completed response packages. We have 18 days left. That's halfway through. We're 20 in and 18 left. I think we can anticipate a slowdown until maybe the last week, And then I think the last week we'll see a rush again. I would imagine over 30, potentially 35. Happy to give updates to the board as you want them as far as the numbers are concerned. After the completion of the closing date, we have a first stage screening that will occur. It will occur on the 28th of March. That's a Monday. And I'll talk a little more in depth of what that will look like as we go along. Through the weekend and into the first of the week, we will do two things. One is we'll begin to notify those applicants that were not successful. And then we will also post online, again, working with the Department of Human Services here, additional questions for those applicants who are qualified to complete and then respond to and submit for a second level of screening. Okay? That will close on the 4th of April. I think that's a council, I'll say board, excuse me, as a school board I come from, so I naturally say board, but for the council to know specific numbers on how many go to the next level. The final screening will begin on the 7th of April. That's a Thursday. We will put before council a selection of finalists for the interview process by that Monday. It's an all-day event. By the 15th, we should be prepared, 15th of April, to notify the public of finalists. During the week of the 18th, it's our intent to interview selected finalists for the city administrator position. Hopefully by the 2nd of May, we will be prepared to introduce the new city administrator to the public. And by the 1st of June, with ample amount of time to give notice and arrive, I think the 1st of June is a target date for initiating the position locally. Okay, so that's a rundown of the timeline.
Mike,
Yes.
hit on 411. Your first entry for 411,
Yes.
or I can help you. Basically on 411, at that stage of the process, council will select those three. They'll take all of those applicants that have answered questions, and council, and those applicants have been graded. At that point, council will take those applicants and select what they believe to be the top 2, 3, 4, however many we need out of that group to wind up with our finalists in that 4/11 meeting or session.
So let me just briefly kind of fill in some of the backstory to each of the events. The initial screening will be done by the Colorado Workforce. They are collecting applications now. We have completed a prerequisite list to screen all applicants with that is a minimum requirement for them to be considered at another level, at the second level. We continue to need to look closely at just what specific qualities you all want in your city administrator. We will create, I say we, but that's myself and representative or representatives from the council, a screening tool that will give us a way to screen and look at every one of the applicants that is qualified to fill the position and allow us to rank them based on what you want as a council from highest to lowest. What we'll try to do is give you strengths and any concerns so that all the decisions are made by you as a council. Everybody else that's going to be involved in this process is a set of eyes trying to lead you to the best and strongest applicants. The screening committee working off a screening tool will be between 6 and 8, depending upon what you choose. It's my recommendation, and I think your desire, to include the community in that process, whether they're organizations, seniors, businesses, and others. Yes.
Thanks, Mike. And regarding that particular time, in fact, if the newspaper wanted to make a note of this, I would request that anyone that wants to be involved in that screening process, that initial screening process, we are looking for a broad range of the community, and I would ask that they email myself and Councilmember Meisner, so Ekstrom and Meisner, and let us know if you're interested in being part of that committee. You need to be available on the 7th of April for this training for that screening process. But once again, any community members that are interested in being involved in this community aspect of it.
There are a limited number. I mean, I think the recommendation is that one council member and the mayor came out of our committee to sit on that. So if we go to 8, that means 6. If you go to 6, that means 4. But so there, I think you're going to have a lot of interest. It's just not a lot of space at this juncture. But there is a voice, by the way. The next level then is that we have to create a set of questions that we determine gets us to the core of what you want to hear from people that might be your city administrator. And those questions will be attached to some things that I think are important. One is, are they willing to come to Canyon City and work within the salary range that we have available? There are some pieces in the job description that we want to make sure they have, driver's license and others. So we'll ask a variety of questions related to those and then look at them answering and responding to questions. The second level applicants will have approximately 7 days. We'll notify them on a Monday. They have through the week and the weekend, and they need to be submitted on the following Monday. Okay? At that point, we'll initiate then the screening process on the 7th. We have work to do before that because we're going to have to get the tool together. We're going to have to bring in the selected members of the screening committee and train and answer questions and prepare for that process. After that, we will present to you, council members, a list of qualified applicants ranked kind of by number and ranked by strengths and any concerns that we're able to identify based on what you all want. You then will have to find the time. I think it's in executive session, but I don't know the workings quite well enough to determine who your finalists are. Our target finalist number is 3. That's one of the things that it's not hard and fast, because you might see a clear separation at 2, and you might not see that separation until you get to 4. But it will not be a long list. Then those finalists will be asked to be a part of the interview process. Now, the interview process is also a time that we're going to look at doing something that involves the community and staff. We're considering putting 3 levels in to the process. The first, and most obvious, will be an interview process with you, the council, with the applicants. We would also like to find time within that framework to bring the applicants to town to see our facilities, to meet our staff, to talk to department heads and get their feedback in the process. And then finally, another more community-based interviewing group that will interview the candidates and then try to list strengths and concerns. All of this strengths and concerns comes back to you as a council to help you get insight from a couple perspectives maybe you wouldn't get if you just interviewed by yourselves. And then your job then is to select the candidate that meets your your needs and will lead the city into the future. Questions?
Let me make a kind of a correction. The session that we're going to have on 4/7, that session, the training for that session is tentatively scheduled for 3/24. So if we have citizens that are interested in that, then they need to be available for both of those dates, 3/24 for a training session and 4/7 for the actual reviewing of those applications. And I will also be providing some more public information on that.
Thank you.
Those people that would participate in the interviewing process would have a training session before the interviews also.
So council, at this point, if you had any questions regarding the process for myself or Jim or for Mike, we're not going to be going over this later on this evening. This is now. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mike. Sounds like a lot of work.
Well, we're hoping that we get a really broad base of eyes on individuals, and we have a strong body of strengths and concerns as you make decisions.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
We've done the administrator's report. Okay, Kathy, were there any requests to speak to City Council?
Received no written request to speak on an item on the agenda tonight.
Okay. And then we'll move on to number 7, which is ordinance number 3-2016 on second reading. Would you read by title?
This is a bill for ordinance number 3, series of 2016, a land use ordinance providing for local regulation with respect to the cultivation, sale, and use of marijuana and marijuana products by unlicensed persons within the city of Canyon City.
Thank you. Is a report from City Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm having some voice troubles today, so if you can't hear me well, let me know and I'll try to do better. What I intend to do tonight, unless there are questions or directives otherwise, is just concentrate on what I left the last meeting thinking was the only unresolved issue in the ordinance, and that's the part of the ordinance that you'll find in red line on page 6 of the bill for ordinance, which is would become section 1734020E if the ordinance is adopted on final reading. I've also passed out a handout tonight to give some options, make council aware of some options, thinking this might help us to get from here to there with perhaps less confusion. So I'll start with the options. Option 1 in your handout. Does everybody have their handout? Okay. Option 1 is the language that was in the ordinance when it was passed on first reading. If this is your preferred option, you don't need to do anything but pass the ordinance on second reading to have that become part of your ordinance. Option number 2 was suggested during the preceding council meeting, and that eliminates the first sentence. In fact, it turns out it eliminates a little too much, but it just makes reference to the various types of high-intensity discharge lighting. We probably would need, if we go the route of option 2, we would probably need to add, after the word prohibited, the wording with respect to the indoor cultivation of marijuana so that we connect it back to marijuana. The elimination of the first sentence sort of disconnected it. Option 3, which is what was in the text of the ordinance as presented to you through your packets, we have determined will not work. And that is because I probably jumped the gun with respect to what the local fire district and its personnel were willing to do regarding lighting. The chief of the district is here tonight, and he may wish to make comment. But I think I can summarize the fire department's position by saying that the fire department does not wish to make an initial inspection with respect to any high-intensity lighting. They feel, and upon reflection, I think rightfully so, that the initial inspection should be made by the electrical inspector, which is a state office. So if those who wish to use the high-intensity lighting would need, before they use it, an inspection by the state electrical inspector to gain certification or approval to use the setups the marijuana growers have. Thereafter, the fire district would send out its personnel, and they would do annual re-inspections so that we don't have cultivators changing the lay of the land in terms of electrical systems after the initial inspection. So it keeps them more or less under control, in that the fire department would be invited into houses, perform an inspection, and then report to either the building inspector or the electrical inspector or whomever else might need or benefit from a report as to their findings. Remember, the goal here is first to the extent we can, prevent fires that are preventable, and secondly, the goal is to make first offenders as safe as we can make them if they enter into places where high-intensity lighting has been used, by giving those involved an opportunity to look over the lay of the electrical systems as originally set up and as set up from year to year. So again, option 3 doesn't work in its present form. Option 4 tends to, in my opinion, capture the essence of what we try to do in option 3. Again, a first inspection by a state electrical inspector with follow-up inspections annually by the fire district, which the fire district appears to be willing to do, and I think appreciative of the opportunity of being asked to do it. So that's all I'm going to say about the ordinance, unless there are questions about lighting or other parts of the ordinance.
Are there any questions or comments from council?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Mr. Weed.
Thank you, Mayor. John, it's, one of the things I do when I look at rules is trying to figure out, because I figure there's always going to be somebody who's going to try and figure out a way to get around the rules. So that's what I'm doing here is, so once the state electrical inspector approves a system, what kind of documentation follows that? So when the fire department comes a year later, they can tell if something's been changed. You know, they may inspect a system that has 5 lights in it and come back a year later and there's 20.
That's a good question, and probably we didn't cover all that ground, but what the subsequent inspections are looking for is not necessarily deviations from what the electrical inspector found upon the first inspection, but situations that suggest hazards that could lead to fires or lead to unexpected, unwanted experiences by first responders in the event of a fire. So it won't be foolproof. And probably there's nothing we could do other than inspecting once daily or very, very close to that to know that nothing changes. But the concept is to get it right in the first instance and have enough follow-up that it's likely to stay right.
Okay, and then I guess as a that sounds reasonable enough. As a follow-up to that, what happens if they fail the fire department's inspection?
And the fire department would notify us. It's a prohibition, and what most likely would happen is there'd be notice to the marijuana cultivator and some short chance to correct the situation, and if not, we'd probably proceed with an ordinance violation claiming a nuisance.
Okay, and,
as all these violations can be
Right,
put
and-
into nuisance form.
and the enforcement part of this would just follow as a natural consequence of the rest of the language in the ordinance.
That is correct, through our nuisance system as opposed to having to go through state court and the criminal system.
Thank you.
Mr. Ekstrom?
Thank you. Councilman Weed brought up a good question, and since the fire chief is here, I was wondering if you could come up and actually answer that first point that you mentioned. Thank you, Chief, for coming in.
No problem. Good evening, everyone. John and I have talked kind of extensively recently on this issue here, and the problem we have in the fire district is that we have limited enforcement capabilities. So we rely on the city, within the city boundaries, to help enforce some of those issues, and that's the process that would transpire here. If we found a violation on an inspection, we would go through that process and notify, we're assuming at this point, the building department and possibly the state electrical inspector who covers this area, that there is a violation there, and the city's building department would follow up with the ordinance procedure that the city has in place for handling that type of violation. That help?
It does. In answering Dennis's question, does your staff have the ability to come in and notice if something is way beyond what its intended or original permit was for?
Yeah, we currently do over 800 occupancies that we inspect on an annual basis or semi-annual basis. In talking with Mr. Havens, we focus primarily on 3-family and above. The residential fire code aspects are handled by the city building department. This will be kind of a crossover, but the fire code in itself is a lot of the parameters are the same. So our inspector and inspecting personnel would have a good grasp on what would be an illegal installation or a violation of the code.
Okay. And then second, during our last council meeting, it was actually brought up by a couple of community members as to why do we even need this type of language in the ordinance? Why even bring up the lighting issue? Could you maybe talk about that for a moment?
Well, a lot of the high-intensity lighting components that are in use today, many come with installation parameters that are set by code, and for a homeowner or whoever it might be to just use those components and install them without following that particular code could create substantial fire hazards within that residence or structure or whatever it might be. So part of the process, I think, in the overall big picture was to provide some type of mechanism to ensure that the legal grow operations were at least following the applicable electrical codes, building codes, what have you, for those operations, given the environment they're going to be constructed in. A lot of times, and with the illegal grow operations, the fire service in the states where marijuana has been legalized, there's still a prevalence of illegal operations because they try and skirt the laws with quantities and what have you. There's still criminals out there that will grow no matter what happens with this aspect, but there's been a sharp increase in injuries, fatalities associated with conditions found inside of these grow operations when there is a fire event. So that was one of the overriding aspects of this was life safety for the building occupants as well as the firefighters responding to those occupancies.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? By adding annual inspections to indoor marijuana lighting for marijuana grows, is that going to be cumbersome for your department as far as manpower and resources to be able to do that?
Well, that's a good question. We're not sure how that's going to play out. We're not sure how many people are going to follow the ordinance and regulation. I don't remember if, say this is a voluntary process or how voluntary and non-voluntary it is. you know, once a person is in the system, then we'll have a tracking as to how many inspections we might do in the course of a year. You know, we have 800 inspections that we try and do on an annual basis, and I can say honestly that we don't do all 800 on an annual basis, but we have a system in place to do that. These types of inspections they would not be as in-depth as some of the other building inspections that we do have, so there would be a quicker type inspection. Given the size of the structures, I think it was limited to 100 square feet, if I remember correctly. So that wouldn't initially present a problem. If the number of those inspections did increase, we would have some concerns on being able to adequately inspect those on an annual basis moving forward, so. And I have to find a way to address that.
Mr. Meisner.
Council, I'd just like to ask that you, I think we're, Chief, at least from my standpoint,
Thank you.
I would at least like to ask council that we consider the intent of this ordinance. One, it was to address the problem in residential areas. I think we need to keep it as simple as possible. We went back, we allowed the higher efficient LEDs and those types of lighting. Keep in mind that we're talking about 8 to 16 plants. We're talking about a grow area of 100 square feet. I'm in favor of eliminating all the high wattage, high current, high usage devices. Keep it simple and let them use those efficient lights and not let them use the high current lights, and basically go with option 2 and keep it simple. We're talking about residential areas.
We're a little ahead of ourselves. Are we done with the chief? Any other questions of the chief?
Yeah, I would say for now,
Thank you.
something may come up during the conversation with
Okay.
the public, but.
Well, this time then we have any comments from the audience would like to come and comment on this. Would you state your name and address, please?
My name is John Hamrick, and I live at 108 Dewey Road here in Canyon City. I have 2 comments. Number one, this is more on the complex side, but Councilman Weed, perhaps by including some language that would require the applicant or the grow operation to submit an electrical line drawing sufficient to determine load and connected equipment for review by the state electrical inspector and subsequent inspectors. That would cover your concern about changes. And then I would like to, I did talk to Mr. Havens about this prior to the meeting, but the language that you have in front of you, the prohibition clause does not include language directing the prohibition for indoor grow operations. If you don't include some language like that in the prohibition, you could outlaw the sodium vapor lamps or the high-intensity lights that you have in the parking lot. It could also outlaw the headlights that I have on my 2008 Mustang, which would be really, really bad. But those are my comments.
You may have missed it, but I did add some language to option 2 that I think clarifies your issue. We would add after the word prohibited with respect to the indoor cultivation of marijuana.
I did hear your
connect the
comment.
two.
I did hear that, yes.
Does that solve your problem?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else who would like to comment at this time? Would you please come in the microphone and state your name and address?
Cool, 3070 South Street. I just needed to be clarified on this. Is the intent to decriminalize or criminalize? Because it sounds like in the constitutional, Amendment 64 is decriminalization, but it sounds like this is moving more towards the notion of criminalizing.
No.
And I'm unclear on which one it is. Is it both, or is it?
No, it makes it perfectly legal to grow marijuana in structures given certain requirements. That's all.
So the intent is to criminalize on these points.
Well, there
that
was
we're
never any
discussing.
concept of criminalization. It's legal. We just wanted to set the numbers and the regulation in areas.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
It's an ordinance to create good neighbors because of problems we've had with smell, traffic, dangers, also harm to children, and other aspects for first responders and such. And it's an ordinance to create good neighbors. And within our city, it is within state law to regulate the number of grows allowed within our city limits. That
First
would-
option is to just slap a classification on it and a fine. Is that what the whole point is?
No, if you're not following the regulation, that could be the consequence, sure.
Right.
And it was in the state law as well.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Would you state your name and address, please? Okay.
I had a question. The chief said that there had been a number of fire incidences as well as fatalities related to the HID lights, because it seems like that's a pretty big hang-up is the HID lights. So I was just curious as to what incidences and fatalities were directly related from those HID lights.
Well, I think it could cause a problem. That's what the discussion was, and we're trying to avert that.
It was said that there were already incidences directly related to those HID lights, and that's why we're moving towards, in the language, moving towards eliminating them.
It was my
Go ahead.
interpretation that he was referring to the industry in general, and the thought that comes to my mind is the home that burned up north of Colorado Springs that I think was related to lighting and to overall current draw on that home.
So as far as the language in the ordinance is concerned, you'll be completely eliminating the HID lights? Is that what I understood from you?
Yes, that's my opinion.
Those HID lights are code compliant, and when they come straight from the distributor, you realize that.
Yes,
So what's the need to eliminate them then?
because I'm understanding that that type of lighting provides a higher risk than other types of lighting.
If you guys are regulating and creating this ordinance you're trying to regulate it, so, regulate it. If it's not installed correctly, then it's a code violation. I don't understand what good eliminating them completely is gonna do besides, make it easier for, administration-wise.
I think
I
we'll-
agree with you, but that's part of my point is that are we going to get 35 people involved in the whole process to make for sure that the lighting's correct? I just think that's overkill versus we're talking about a residential situation, just eliminating it, in my opinion. Go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're going to solve this problem when we're done with public comment, and that will probably answer his question in the course of our conversations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussions on the floor? Would you please come to the microphone? Would you please come to the microphone and state your name and address?
Hi, everybody. Most of you know me.
Could you
as-
please state your name and
My
address,
name
please?
is John Alderman with an A. Many of you know me as a local artist. I have completed many sculptures and murals in this community.
Hi,
I've
John.
designed.
Can I have your address, John?
No. What? Do you need it?
That's what I ask.
Really? Come on. Google up. You can Google me up and get it.
Would you like your address?
Excuse me?
I asked if you could give your address.
No, you can Google it up. I'm not here to state my address,
Okay.
but I am.
What'd you
I am
state?
here-
You refused. Go ahead.
Very well. I have some very pertinent information that may help you all.
You've got 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Preston. I think the world of you, by the way. I'm very concerted and concerned about such things like HID lighting. First off, they are code compliant. They come that way from the factory. Now, if the fire marshal deems that you haven't wired it properly, I can understand that. But to outlaw based upon ignorance, I've been growing under HID lights way before it was even legal. I've been a grower for 39 years. I was the first I was the first person in court to be convicted. Well, actually, it's kind of thrown out. I had to do a community mural, thanks to Kathy Eberling. So I had 28 little plants. I would like to say one thing. You guys can think whatever you want to think, but I grow medicinal cannabis because I have watched, and I actually am a cancer survivor. I created my own medicine based upon the RSO, Ricks Simpson oil. And I had melanoma, carcinoma. I wouldn't even be standing here today to even address you and to be silly had I not have been able to make that oil. Those oils were directly related to the lights because I grew in a very small space. I did everything code compliant. I made the oil exactly the way I needed to make it. And I healed myself. I changed my lifestyle. And I started juicing and doing many beneficial things to my body. But the oil cured my cancer. And it's cured many other people. And you know what? I don't even charge to make it. That is my service to humanity. Oh my gosh, people, 1 in 2 males will get cancer in their lifetimes.
I think the subject was the lights.
Okay,
I got
let's
it.
get back.
I got it.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. What? Excuse me? Why would you interrupt me on such an important statement that I'm making?
Because the discussion was about the lights. That's what we started
Well,
out
you know,
with.
what about cancer?
What about
What
the
about
lights?
COPD? What about epilepsy? What about all the many? If this plant were discovered in the jungle tomorrow, it would change the world. Well, you know what? It is changing the world, and I'm a part of it.
Okay,
And
thank
you know
you.
what? All right, back to the HID. Since you're going to be, really, do you not have empathy and compassion? There
Okay.
are people that are suffering, and I deal with it every day. And I'm not a doctor. My dad was a doctor, but I am not a doctor. You know what? I'm just a person who cares.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. As far as HID lighting, you are out of your league, sir. And you don't even know what you're talking about, and I encourage you. I'm not chastising you, but I encourage you to do your due diligence and research. Because apparently, up to this point, you have done none. And I, on the other hand, have experience and knowledge in this area. And I would hope that you would ask me, perhaps, not as a professional, but just as a person and as a friend to this community. And I care about people. And you may disagree with me, but I'm still going to care about you anyway.
Okay, thank you.
HID lighting, yes, I'm
Okay.
all for it. LED, I'm all for it. Fluorescent lighting, I'm all
You've
for it.
overreached your time.
But
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Really?
Yeah, you overreached your time.
Really? Okay. But
Really.
I'm most in favor of God's natural sunlight because nothing tops that. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I've overextended. But if anybody who has cancer or would like to talk to me, feel free because I'm wide.
Any further comments from the council? Mr. Weed?
Are we done with the public discussion?
We just
or-
closed the public session, yes.
Yeah, I have lots of comments. I guess I'll have to say I disagree with Councilman Meisner rather strongly. I think it's perfectly reasonable to, first of all, this would eliminate the use of all high-intensity lighting, period. And there may be other applications for that, but the whole point of, I don't grow marijuana. I don't know what works best, but there are people in the world who do, and apparently there's a lot of benefits to using higher intensity lighting. The systems will be inspected by state electrical inspector, so we know they'll be installed properly. So, and it's a very small space. I just don't see the problem with it.
You hear the comments? Okay. We are then to discuss either one of the four options or not vote on it and go for more options. So what is the pleasure of the council? Discussion here.
Got my hand up if you want to call on me.
Mr. Weed.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, I'm going to make the motion to amend ordinance number 3, series of 2016, to change section 17.34.020E to option 4 of the handout that we received today. And I would also like to suggest a minor edit to option 4. In the third line, where it says, continuing on, and xenon short arc lamps are prohibited, then I would add, with respect to the indoor cultivation of marijuana. Which would make this provision for inspection subject to marijuana cultivation only. And I have no idea why, or maybe what, if anybody would use HID lighting for any other purpose in a house, but maybe you would, who knows? And so I want to restrict this strictly to marijuana cultivation.
Would you care to comment on that, Mr. Havens?
Certainly one reasonable way to tackle the problem. It's not the only reason. Again, option 1 is already there. Option 2 seems to be favored, at least by some of you, with the one change that was mentioned, the with respect. 3 is out, and 4 was an effort at compromise, again, for the protection and safety of inhabitants and first responders.
Comments? Okay, then I will call for a motion.
We have a motion.
I have a motion. We're waiting for a second.
I'll
Second.
second
Oh,
it.
you have a motion? Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second it.
Mr. Gill? Are there any discussions on the motion? Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I would like to ask the chief if option 4, as it reads with that modification, is acceptable, and if he's in favor of that.
I have it in front of me, but John, that was the one you had just asked me about at the earlier in the meeting, correct? Yes.
Okay, that's all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
But then we have, with the addition that Mr. Weed had put in there, is that what you're approving? Is that correct?
That was my motion.
That was your
That's
motion.
the motion that's on the floor.
All right, so I thought. All right, then. We have motion and second, and discussion on the motion?
I'll second this motion.
You did.
Yes.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner,
Nay.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Approved by majority vote.
Okay, moving on to number 8, a public hearing application for a special use permit for Sons of Italy.
Whoa, nope.
What?
We just moved to amend it. We still have to
No, we gotta
vote
go
on
back.
them.
That's right, we need a motion now to
Oh, I thought that was
adopt as
his
amended.
motion.
So,
Okay. Mr. Ekstrom.
thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve this particular ordinance, which I've misplaced. Here we go. I've got it. Thank you. Mayor and members of council, I move that we approve ordinance number 3, series of 2016, with the modifications and amendments as just stated, and actually as written in our handout here as E,
So
on second reading,
you're adopting it as amended.
as amended.
Okay?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? Shall we have a roll call?
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Weed,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner,
Aye.
Councilmember Gill,
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, well, let's move on. It's been a fun several years. This one hopefully won't be so hard. Okay, step number 8, public hearing. Again, an application for a special event liquor permit for Sons of Italy. And I am now opening the public hearing. Going to have a report from the city clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is John Carochi, representing the Sons of Italy, who has applied to this council for a special event permit for March 13th between noon and 5 p.m. for a wine tasting event out at PCC. Notice of this public hearing was given by posting that location. This is the 4th wine tasting event that this organization has conducted. This event will be similar to the other wine tasting events they have conducted. Actual wine tasting will be a 2-hour event beginning at 2 p.m. Light hors d'oeuvres will be served accompanying the wine. The event is being conducted as a fundraiser for the organization to continue their efforts to promote the positive values of the Italian culture and heritage. Only individuals aged 21 and up will be allowed to enter. Volunteers from the organization will be checking IDs at the door, and those of legal, since they're only allowing age 21 up, there won't be a request for bracelets at the doors. So, and then they'll be also assisting with the patrolling of the perimeter. Upon review of the application, the fees have been submitted. The diagram meets my filing requirements. Applicant has obtained permission to use the premises, and the organization is in good standing with the Secretary of State's office. So with that, I'd open it up to any questions you may have of John.
Hi, John. Are there any questions of the applicant? Mr. Weed.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, John. Thanks for coming down here. This is, will not be a new thing for you. Are you familiar with the Colorado Liquor Code?
Yes, I am.
Is there a copy of the liquor code on file with your establishment?
Yes.
And how many volunteers do you plan on having for this event? And how are they trained on the liquor code? And if they're not, how do you plan to train them?
Well, counting the distributors, we probably have about 12 volunteers. And some of the distributors that pour their own from their own companies. And then all of those that are not part of distributorship have either been to Kathy's training session, or they have, in a couple cases, I think we have folks that have been serving alcohol through different bars for several years here in town. And I actually think a lot of those have been through the class too, the certification, or they probably wouldn't be serving alcohol.
Okay. And are you fully aware that you're responsible for compliance with the Colorado Liquor Code, and that any violations of this code may be held against you and/or your organization, as well as future licensing?
Yes, I'm very aware of that.
It's, so this event is this coming Saturday. Would you like to take this opportunity to tell the rest of the world a little bit about it?
Sunday.
Sunday.
The event is, sure, I'd love to tell you a little bit. The event is on Sunday, not Saturday.
Sunday, the 13th, Daylight Savings Day, tie all those pieces together. It's our fourth event, as Kathy mentioned. We have been out at Pueblo Community College Fremont campus for all four of the events, and it's a great area. We have a different theme every year. This year it's Italian, of course, and Spanish and Portuguese wines. We have Italian appetizers and a few other, depending on the theme. There'll be some other appetizers besides Italian. And then we charge $20 for the event, and people can sample from up to 30 different wines. Hopefully they don't sample all of them. But they have an opportunity to taste and pour what they don't drink. But it's a great opportunity to discuss what kind of wines they like and talk to some of the distributors and the people that are pouring that are pretty knowledgeable with wine. So it's a good opportunity for them.
All right. Well, thanks, John. I don't have any more questions about your event this Sunday.
Sunday, and yes, I do have tickets, as a matter of fact, in case.
They have great food.
Sunday.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Weed. Are there any other comments or questions from the council? Any comments from the audience? Would like to step forward. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public meeting and ask for a motion and a second. Mr. Weed.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, make the motion to approve the application for a special event liquor permit for the Order of Sons of Italy in America for March 13th.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Meisner. Any discussion on the motion? If not, let's call the roll.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, item number 9, resolution number 8, 2016, amendment to the comprehensive plan, Eastern Fremont County Trails, Open Space, and River Corridor Plan. Could we have a report from the city planner? Oh, Doug, sorry. Mr. Doug.
I just saved you, Terry. You owe me.
Noted.
As the council may know, the city has partnered with the Rec District in the past. Many other people have participated in this effort in the past as well. Going back to 1997, what was called the Eastern Fremont County Trails and Open Space Master Plan was adopted back at that time. Jim Hoare here is with the Rec District tonight, and more recently, I think that the Rec District and others have found that when we go as a community to submit grants for GOCO funds and other funds that are maybe out there, we have a plan that a lot of these granting agencies are looking at going, well, this is out of date. It's been a long time. The recreation needs of your community have likely changed. What are the recreation needs today? And so back a couple of years ago, I think that the Rec District and others got together, started this idea that we needed to look at updating that recreation plan, that trail, excuse me, that trail plan. And over time, the Rec District, with many other partners, developed a plan. That copy of that plan is in, excuse me, in your packet, and offered that up to the community as the plan to go forward with for the future. A couple months ago, in September, we took that to the Planning Commission. There was a public hearing on that, and at that time, several people came forward to talk about the plan, and generally, the comments that the Planning Commission heard at that time related to trails crossing private property, and particularly in the 4 Mile Creek area. We had several property owners. I'm sorry, my voice is probably going to give out because I got a bad cold, but it's hanging on. But I'll try here. So, but the property owners in 4 Mile Creek area came forward and we're talking about their concerns for trails in that area, particularly trails that might follow the creek, as those trails would go across private property. And equally important, some of those people felt that they had already received development approvals. lot lines had already been laid out, homes been built, so on and so forth, and trails could affect the property, their properties. So at that time, the Planning Commission said that before this thing was adopted, that issue really needed to be addressed. And so what we tried to do is, in this particular plan, is we have brought forward the work that had been developed jointly with many partners, including the rec district, and the county have adopted that plan. But we have taken that plan, and as you can read in the resolution, we tried to put forward some amendments to that plan that would address the concerns that exist specifically here in Canyon City with the property owners that came to the Planning Commission meeting. And what we tried to do, as you can kind of read in this plan, in this resolution, is to basically change the language in the plan to make it, in effect, more general. The plan, as crafted in the amendment language, essentially says that generally we believe as a community that a north-south alignment, I'll just call it a north-south alignment, on the eastern part of the community would be something that would be in the best interest of the community. However, we do not want to go forth at this time and making any kind of representation about crossing private properties, that there will be crossings of private properties someday in the future, or so on. That all we're saying here is that generally a general alignment on the east side is good, or would be good, but it still has to be worked out with private property owners, and that the trail may end up being somewhere away from 4 Mile Creek. It might not be on those private properties, so it might be using 4 Mile Lane or some other avenue, if you will, that would allow pedestrians, bikers, and so on to go in a north-south corridor on the east side of town. So the amendment language really tries to set that forward. And the other thing that I should point out is that this plan, once it's adopted and goes into the community's general plan, is only a guiding document. It does not have the force of a regulatory mechanism. Now, I know that the conversations come up, recommendations are sometimes made with the Planning Commission that the consistency with the trails, but again, it's only a guiding document. So Planning Commissions and their recommendations, City Council and their decisions would not have to follow that if there were substantial opposition about a particular location or part of an alignment. So those are the changes that we have made to this document. Other than that, the document that has been brought forward through the planning process with the rec district would be adopted through this resolution with one additional change. Now, you may recall back a couple of, well, maybe a month or so ago now, the staff brought forward a plan, and we called it the Royal Loop, which was part of the planning effort that was developed through the rec district's effort and the combined community effort. But what it did do is it took the area up by the Royal Gorge Park and added some more detail to it so we could begin to understand where trailheads might be, how trails could be laid out up in that area, and so on. And so this amendment would bring forward that plan and add to the document that had been prepared through the community process spearheaded by the rec district. That plan would be added as an attachment C in this document. That document, again, this attachment is very consistent with the general plan that had been brought forward, but it's beginning to add additional detail that we feel are going to be necessary to go forward with a major grant application to the state to get grants to begin to take trails and take the trail from the River Corridor Trail, continue that trail on out past PCC as it does now, on up highway to a point up near Skyline Drive where it could branch off and then begin to connect into the Royal Gorge Park. So it would allow people to have a biking path, whether they leave the community to go up to the park or a downhill bike path to come to the back to the community at the end of the day of biking at the park. So with that addition, again, what this would do is it would take the plan that would have been brought forward by the rec district and other community partners. We tried to address the issues that were brought up with the planning commission, particularly out in the 4 Mile Creek area. And we've added in, again, the additional detail that was consistent with the original concept, but some additional detail that will help us with grant applications as we go forward, going towards the Royal Gorge Park. And with that, if the council passes this resolution, it would adopt this as part of our comprehensive plan for the community.
Thank you, Doug. Are there any questions or comments from council at this time?
Mayor?
Mr. Gill?
The way that they've done these amendments and such in here, I was a member of the Planning Commission and was very much against it because it involved private properties. You know, a line had been driven across, or been drawn across them. It looks to me like with the amendments and stuff that they've made, they've taken care of that concern on my nature, you know, on my position. Because I don't feel that we should incorporate any plans or visions that involve private property without involving the private property owners, and it looks like they have done that in the changes in here. I'm very, very happy with the changes that were made in protecting their personal and private property.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Any other comments, Mr. Weed?
Well, yeah, it's, are we gonna have Jim come up here at some point, or? No, okay, he's shaking his head no. Okay, so, I just wanna make sure I understand exactly what we're doing here. So we are, because the Eastern Fremont County Trails Open Space and River Corridor Master Plan is a completed document.
Yes.
So we are going to adopt this completed document with some minor modifications to suit the city's purposes. So we're okay.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
As I mentioned earlier, the rec district and the county have adopted the plan as it was originally prepared. And in effect, the changes that I have mentioned are, I'll call them modifications, amendments, to that document to meet the needs of the city.
And then, not that this is likely, but is there the possibility that in some future grant application, there's kind of going to be two versions of this master plan floating around? There's the city version, which is slightly different than the overall county version. I don't think it is, but it's,
You know,
I can comment.
I think that the chances on that are really pretty remote. I think that there's so much consistency in the things that we want to try to accomplish in terms of connecting to the Royal Gorge Park. Someday, you know, again, there are property owner issues, but maybe someday there will be a connection going out, you know, all the way to Florence. But nobody's going to force anything upon property owners if they don't want to do that. And that's not our intent. But I think that there's enough consistency in the overall direction of this plan that whenever we do go for GOCO grants or any other grant for that matter, there's a lot of consistency in what we're saying. And I think that the differences are so negligible that their impact on grant potential, I think, is probably minor to none.
if anybody even noticed.
If they even notice.
Did you have anything more to say, Mr. Ekstrom?
No, I just wanted to make sure we didn't commit Jim to coming up and commenting on this, since this is really something the city has been involved with since the beginning. And I appreciate the rec district in the past coming to explain this plan. However, it was members of our staff, city staff, that were part of this document to begin with. And so ultimately, it falls on us as a city to address these issues, and I concur. I'm happy with those modifications that have been made regarding particularly the 4 Mile area. There's nothing there that says that we're going to start digging trail in their backyard, and really, adopting this particular document is going to allow us as a community to work with these other partnering agencies to start moving forward to find grant monies for the bigger picture, and that's ultimately creating these trails on city property in the city park and connecting possibly the big goal, connecting this loop with the Royal Gorge.
Any other comments from council? Mr. Meisner?
Yes, maybe Scott can you explain the second paragraph? Whereas? Or somebody?
The urban growth boundary?
Right. And, well, the area there with north of the,
The city has a city boundary, as you know, you all know. But also in our comprehensive plan, going back into 2009, the city adopted what was called the urban growth boundary. And that was an area, urban growth boundaries are basically the area of influence, I guess if you want to call it that a community expects that it could have, for the future. And so an urban growth boundary was adopted into our general plan, our comprehensive plan. And for the most part, that urban growth boundary that's outside the incorporated area is the area that is up going towards the Royal Gorge Park that sits between the park and the highway. That's a big part of that urban growth boundary. So it's an area of influence or area where the city has some level of concern about future growth, figuring that the city would grow into that area potentially someday. But obviously it's outside of the incorporated boundary today.
and there's some relevance to that particular area with potential trails?
Big part of this trail linkage, and we talked about this Royal Gorge Loop piece of it, is outside of the city incorporated boundary, but it is within that urban growth boundary. Those trails lie within that urban growth boundary.
Mr. Havens.
Maybe I can add a little bit to this. I mean, the urban growth boundary concept is something that is required, mandated by state statute. In terms of road routes and things of that sort, there's fairly strong language in the statutes that would create in an urban growth boundary the indication, that would allow for an indication of where a highway, for example, ought to go, to be somewhat set in stone in terms of future planning, so that as the city expands and the area expands, those who do the planning for the region know where highways ought to go. There isn't that strong language with respect to trails, but the concept is that the city will grow, and it makes sense for the city to have some influence with respect to land adjacent to and near to the city. In fact, we have an agreement with Fremont County that covers our urban growth area, where there are certain triggers to the annexation process with respect to the development of land that is both within the urban growth area and contiguous with the city. So there's a process to be followed to determine whether contiguity exists, and if it does exist, then the city and the county have agreed to certain procedures that go from there regarding the development of that property and the potential annexation. So all of these things come to us, and we don't always like them, as regional planning tools that we need to pay attention to some extent.
Any other comments from council? If not, then are there any comments from the audience? Would you please state your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Tom Goodwin, 1531 4 Mile Lane. And I come to you humbly, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak, Mayor and Council, and women, administrator and attorney. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I speak on behalf of a group of property owners that are still opposed with what has been proposed. And I'll try to give you the reasons for opposing, and you Mr. Gill, you end up mentioning, and one of the things that I'm concerned about is you end up with the Fifth Amendment, you can't take property rights. But, you know, one of the things that happened when this first plan came out is our attorneys tell us that when you have a plan like that, it creates a cloud on your title, you know, because you then have the potential of being pushed to go for a trail. And because of that, myself and other landowners object to that. And I think there's several different issues and concerns. You know, one is, and I got a copy of, and it may not be the final, but I got a copy of what you guys are considering. And it says, to the extent practicable, projects aims to preserve the riparian area. And one of the concerns I have is, you know, when you end up with a trail alongside a stream, Forest Service and BLM, one of the issues they get hammered on by the environmentalists all the time is that creates sedimentation to the stream. So you create a negative impact on your water quality. Yeah, yes, you can, there's things you can probably do. You can do paving, etc. But you also have impacts on wildlife. You also have in that area, I don't know if any of you have been up 4 Mile, but one of the things that we're dealing with is nearly every cottonwood died. So you've got tree hazards. If you have a trail going through there, you've got tree hazards that you're also dealing with. You have a negative impact on, like I was saying, and I think the way it's written, there's still, and the concern we have is don't even put anything dealing with the trail up 4 Mile. We, and I'll get to that in a second. You also have one of the options that you end up presenting is, oh, well, if we can't go on the private, we'll go on the roads. Well, right now, the city portion of the road is, and I'm calling Tony from the road department all the time because it ends up very quickly full of potholes. It ends up full of washboardy roads and very dangerous. You have all kinds of trucks going up and down the road. You have horse trailers, and there's blind corners. To have people going down that road is not even acceptable. And you know where you're talking about, part of it is narrow enough with the hill, there's no way you could put a road there or a trail. So the concept, oh, we'll just move it over to the road, creates all kinds of problems for traffic, for the people and the residents there. And, it ends up saying, well, if a property owner wants to do it and we can negotiate, then we'll go over there and have a trail on his. That impacts my property. If our neighbor ends up with a trail, I'm going to have people going by, impacting wildlife, impacting our horses, impacting wildlife. And I'm sure I speak for the other landowners there, that is not acceptable. The other thing that I think is missing in this is you end up looking at 4 Mile Creek. 4 Mile Creek this last year was running at water levels greater than Fountain Creek. Fountain Creek has been a major issue. 4 Mile Creek drains from Pikes Peak, divide that whole area. If you look at the floodplain takes way out from the creek. So there's a lot of issues that, if you're looking at a bridge going across there, one of the concerns I have, if you have a bridge above me with the high water that comes down, it's going to wash down. I don't want that thing catching up in my property. And if it's below me, the other neighbors below us would the same way. So there's a lot of issues. And my recommendation would be simply, in this section, you simply state a trail system, the 4 Mile drainage will not be considered at this time. Or put a clarification that ties in with Mr. Gill, what you said, a trail system and the 4 Mile drainage will not be considered unless on city county property. Any questions? I would oppose having 4 Mile Creek, period, in part of the plan. And talking to Tim Payne, one of our county commissioners, he told me today, he says, I apologize, we should have never let that go through because of the impacts that are there. Questions for me?
Mr. Meisner?
I don't know how we even asked this, but have you actually read 2A? I mean, have you got the same verbiage that we've got?
I don't know that I do.
Is there any way he can read that? Can I give it to him?
Oh, yeah. You want-
Thank you. But no, it still doesn't address my concern. My concern is eliminate the, the possibility so we don't have to deal with it in the future. Any other questions for me?
Any other questions?
You're saying instead of wanting just a general someday, sometime in the far future, maybe we'll think about 4 Mile. You want 4 Mile completely eliminated forever and for always.
Well, I said
Possibility.
not be considered. You could say considered at this time, future plans, you could end up bringing it in, but at this, yes, that's,
Are you aware that our city's intention is really to focus on building trails within a property that we already own? That's where our attentions are and our money is committed to. And
I would agree. Properties you own, I think that's appropriate. Properties you don't own, and when you end up looking, even the road going north on 4 Mile, a segment through our property is not county. It is not. It is owned by us. So to end up proposing something that to me is not legitimate, I'd encourage you to take that portion out.
I mean, I'm not an attorney, and that's why we have John, but it just seems to me like, does anybody agree with me or disagree that, I mean, that's essentially what we're saying in 2A, is that we're removing the 4 Mile trail?
I think it should read it out
I
loud
agree.
so everyone can hear that, what it says.
I mean, it says, let me get my glasses and the mic, everything lined up.
I got it.
For purposes of implementing the plan within the city, Canyon City and its urban growth boundary, the trails and recreation map on page 36 and the projected maps on 38 and 65, and they actually show that trail, of the plan are amended to eliminate a specific trail location along 4 Mile Creek and show a more general long-term statement of intent to provide a north-south trail connection in the easterly portion of the city along or near 4 Mile Creek.
There's a little more.
Pretty vague.
I mean, from my interpretation, that seems like we're trying to say it's not going to be it's not going to be along 4 Mile Creek at this point, but it's going to be in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, and let's not forget the final statement down there that connects the Arkansas River corridor with areas north and east of the city as generally shown in attachment B. The spirit and again the intent of this document is so 10 years from now, if there's a need for a trail to go north or to go east, we at least have it in a plan so that we can have this conversation then. Because without it being in a plan, we as a city are not allowing even the conversation 5 years from now.
And as property owners, I would say, take it out of the plan, period. And if you're going to plan it, what you end up saying, if you're talking about the city, then you ought to be dealing with city property, not private property rights, and impacting those.
if there's any way that we can alleviate some of your concern, when you look at the plan as a whole, there's actually multiple pieces of property that are privately held that have lines over them. 4 Mile
And-
Creek is not an exception. It's actually one of it's one of many areas. If you know, Dawson Ranch is one. The areas to the south of Canyon City have been identified. Private property out there has been identified. And again, this is just land that we're identifying as potential. You as landowners right now, you're saying you may not want to support this. That's fine. So no one's going to come knocking on your door anytime soon to build a trail without your blessing. Again, this is just a general plan so that we can move forward with the bigger projects, again, that are mostly to the west of Canyon.
Well, and, you know, one of the concerns that I know as property owners, several of us have been talking about, and Doug, I don't know if you got me any information that I can, but, you know, one of the concerns we have is, you know, if we're in the city rec district and they're trying to end up doing this on our property or having a trail system going north, maybe we need to end up getting the property owners to try to end up going through the process to eliminate that whole drainage from being in the city rec district.
There might be a little bit of a misconception there. The rec district is not necessarily the entity that would build a trail there. The rec district is not the entity that's going to build a trail up at the Royal Gorge Bridge and Park. Again, these are just trail plans for the area as a whole so that when various entities wish to construct trails, they have them on paper so that when we go for funding, generally these are state grants, you've heard of GOCO. When we go for these grants, we have to have this on paper and as part of a plan so that we can move forward with that process.
And I can understand that. And I think you have plenty of trails that you can put on without 4 Mile Creek being part of that. And I think you still can end up moving forward with GOCO grants. The other property owners, that the trails, it's written across their property, you know, they're going to have to deal with that. And that's, you know, the negative effects of that and the cloud on their title. But for landowners, we'd prefer that you end up just taking our portion out. You're talking about 1 page out of many pages of trail system, and I think it has a long-term benefit for us, knowing that that's not going to be pushed in the future.
John, does that cloud their title?
My opinion that what you're looking at tonight would not cloud a title. I've looked at it and had that in mind, and I don't think that
'Cause there's nothing
suggests that part of the world is a place where it might be considered at some future date for purposes of installing a trail. If the landowners are opposed to the trail and remain opposed, as they have been before, they are today, trail's probably not going to be built. Not now, not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now, unless there are modifications that satisfy everybody involved, including most particularly the landowners. But I don't see it as a cloud. I see it as a trail plan that's in existence, and it could be noted in the records, but it doesn't affect the merchantability of title.
So, John, you're saying that this document, as written, no trails can be built without the consent and cooperation of property owners.
Essentially, I'm saying that as to this proposed trail or corridor and everything else that's in the plan. It's going to take a cooperative effort from all involved. It's going to be easier when we're only on city ground or county ground or public ground of some sort where an entity controls the use of that land and is in favor of trails. But to the extent trails are proposed that cross public and private property or private property only, you're not going to get very far in terms of your trail building plans or your grant applications or anything else without involvement of the property owners. I mean, I think that's a simple fact of life.
Can I ask a question then, following up with what you're saying?
Okay with the chair, it's
Yes,
okay
go
with
ahead.
me.
Based on what you're saying, if the, whoever it is that's doing the trail decides they're gonna do it up the road and cross one property, do all of the properties get involved? Or is it just the one property owner? Because it will affect all the rest of us property owners on a narrow road that will have some very negative traffic effects and everything else.
My response would be these trail building projects are very public projects and activities, and neighbors who see things happening in land close to theirs certainly are invited to participate in the process and would be listened to.
Then will you offer suggestion that any trail will not be built without notification of all the owners in that area? Because, you know, that'd be my concern, is you end up with the city saying, okay, we're gonna go ahead at the trail, we got the money, and it affects every one of the landowners.
Let me say this. I've been sitting in this chair for 25 plus years, and a lot of people come and say, I didn't know about that, when there's been a very public process and they knew or should have known, and somehow they didn't know. I don't think those who put together this plan would undertake an affirmative duty to contact each and every affected property owner in all cases. Certainly if your property is needed to form a trail segment, then you're going to know about it. And if your neighbors know about it, you're likely to hear from them.
That's one of the problems we've had in this whole system, is dependence on public hearings and stuff on the web, and we're not in the city. So
But
we do not
that's the
have.
way the world works, is public notice in
but-
various forms. And
But
it's not
anytime you
long
end up with
before the internet.
anytime you have a zoning change, you end up contacting the people around you because it has the impact on your property, and this has the same effect.
Well, we in our laws have certain notification requirements when there's a legal process called a zone change. This is not a legal process. This is a plan that outlines a vision with respect to a number of trails that those who put the vision together think would be appropriate for this community, which very much appreciates trails.
Can I read one more brief thing?
Mr. Miser.
Maybe for council's benefit, and I'm going on to the next paragraph. However, a significant portion of the desired alignment crosses private properties, some of which have been subdivided and previously developed. It will be necessary to work with future property owners to achieve the conservation and resource objective. Where it is not possible to reach agreement about crossing private properties, other nearby north-south segments outside of such private properties should be considered as a means to complete the north-south connectivity. I think the intent is what we're saying is, we'd like to use 4 Mile, but if we can't reach the agreement of the property owners, we got to go somewhere else. That's my understanding.
I would actually thank you for bringing this to my attention. It actually addresses many of the concerns that were just brought up. The riparian concerns, the floodplain concerns, all of these are part of that paragraph. So I feel that we've adequately addressed the issues that were originally brought to the Planning Commission's concern.
Would you like to have a copy of the amended version so you can see those changes that have been made that
I
appear
would
to
love,
have met
yes, I
your-
would love to. For part of
It
it.
is pretty heavy.
I know what the front page was and the back page was.
Okay, I think we ought to move forward. I think that at this time, any other comments from the audience? John, would you state your name and address?
Hi, my name is John Hamrick, and I reside at 108 Dewey Road here in Canyon City. And I just wanted, I have 2 comments. The number one, Mr. Eisner, you did catch the in the paragraph labeled conservation and resources, that fifth sentence where it starts, where it is not possible, there is a missing to, TO there, where it is not possible to reach agreement. And then in the next paragraph, I have some suggested language that I think is helpful. And I will just read what my suggested language is, and if someone likes it, I can give you my edited copy here. The proposed moderate soft surface trail along the creek bank should connect the Arkansas River Trail to Red Canyon and Oil Well Flats access. Where it is not possible, where it is possible, or in other nearby locations where it is not possible to reach agreement about crossing private properties. So I've rewritten that because it was very unclear to me the way it was written. So in essence, it says, the proposed moderate soft trail should connect the Arkansas River Trail where it is possible, or in other nearby locations where it is not possible, reach agreement about crossing private properties. And I have the one other statement I'd like to see. It's kind of been brought out here, but my concern with the planning process, this is a planning process concern, is that that we have a public process that resulted in a document that could infringe on the rights of private property owners without specific notice to those private property owners. I realize in the legal world that's not necessary, but in this planning process, in the spirit of transparency, it would seem to me that it would be beneficial to all involved that these discussions should have been, occurred 6 months ago rather than here tonight. And so that's my comment, that where planning documents are being written that affect specific private properties, that those property owners be notified of the planning process.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to comment?
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this issue tonight. My name is Don Lay. I live at 83 Lariat Lane in Canyon City. My wife and I own 6 acres of property on either side of 4 Mile Creek. We moved into a new house that we've been thinking about for a long time, which sits approximately 100 yards from the creek. One of the reasons we liked to build there was because of the beautiful surrounding area. The ability to go in and conserve what is there without having more subdivision. Okay? I guess I'm a little disappointed in the last meeting that we were at the last council meeting that addressed this issue. At the end of the meeting, there were quite a few people that had private property along 4 Mile Creek. We were asked to submit our name and our telephone numbers, that we would be called into a meeting with us and members of the city government and come up with an amendment. I've not heard a thing until yesterday when I got wind that this meeting was going to be held and this issue was going to be brought up. As was brought up previously by the gentleman that was just here, it's really disconcerting to know that there's a governmental agency or a quasi-governmental agency, such as the Recreation District, that's planning on something that's going to use your property. It's certainly not the American way. And I'm just a little guy. My wife and I are just trying to live out the American dream. Mentioned that, well, nothing's going to happen for at least 10 years. I'm getting a little old, but dang, I sure want to be still around in 10 years. And I don't want to have to address this then. It was also brought up the fact that nobody's going to come knocking on our door right away asking for our property. Well, yes, sir, it has. It happened to us. When we were moving into this, when we were developing this property or getting ready to build, we wanted to adjust the lot line. several requirements were put to us by the city. One of them was that if you want to adjust this lot line, we're going to ask you to donate a right-of-way through your property for the trail. Now, if that isn't blackmail, I don't know what it is. Now, it's also my understanding, and with all due respect, that this council was against that and it voted it down, that specific requirement, which we really appreciated. But what's going to happen in 7 to 10 years if 4 Mile Creek is still listed in here? Under this amendment, it talks about it 4 or 5 different times, either along the creek or near the creek. The attitude of the council may change in 7 to 10 years. And that council may say, well, we're going to do the same thing. If they want to do something on their property, we're going to get the right-of-way for the trail. I just ask you to think of that and to think of what the property owner is going through. Every time we hear of this, it causes a lot of angst between myself, my wife, my son, who also owns property there, and the neighbors. It says there's a significant portion of the plan for this trail that's owned by private property. I beg to differ with that. 100% of it is. From the time you come from the Arkansas River until 4 Mile Creek comes in contact with Red Canyon Road, it's entirely 100% private property. The only place, well, I take that back. The only 2 places that it's not private property is where Grandview crosses the creek and where the highway crosses the creek. So there's a heck of an upside for you guys to try to deal with landowners trying to get approval to go across their property. I agree with what Mr. Goodwin says, that in order to satisfy us landowners, we would like to have a meeting to try to amend this thing, and the amendment that we would consider would be to mention a 4 Mile Creek, the creek, or anything like that be taken completely out so future property owners don't have to worry about being strong-armed by a governmental agency. In order to get something done on their property, they've got to give up a right-of-way or actual property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? State your name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Angela Bellantoni, and I live at 1107 Main Street, but I also own 2 lots on the very south side of Dawson Ranch, of which 2 sides have trail on them. This is on Greenhorn, and I want to commend 4 Mile Creek for being organized, because Dawson Ranch people that I've talked to said, well, let me know when it comes up. And here I am, the only person, of property owner in Dawson Ranch, that knew that this was coming up. They weren't notified again. And if you turn to page 69, there is a line all the way along every single south boundary on the lots on the south side of Dawson Ranch. And I understand, as John Hamrick brought up, about notification for planning versus zone changes, because I had to send out 35 notices for a zone change, which I am next on the agenda. This is an encumbrance on property. People wanting to buy my lot, if they have the wherewithal to go to the city website, which we encourage them to do, and they see that there's a big gold line on 2 boundaries of my property, they're going to say, you don't have 1 1/3 acres. You have 1 acre. And now let's just keep going. I mean, I don't know how long it is, Dennis. I don't know what the distance is. You frowned right there. There is going to be a perimeter of ground that is going to be removed from the property that I purchased now because of this line. And when I go to resell and someone has wherewithal to check the property, to check the website and see this, it is a detriment to my property values. And I also commend the Rec District for their organization here to put this together. It was a monumental task. But please, the next time, get people together who have a diverse view. So this is a compromise, not just the views of those, and I've heard it here from council people, because we are a community that want trails. I use trails. I love trails. But I don't do trails next to people's houses and on private property. I love trails too. And just eliminating the private property owners and taking consideration for 4 Mile, and again, bless their hearts, they are organized. That's what they do. That's great community out there. Some of these trails encompass such a large community, like Dawson Ranch. I doubt they have that opportunity to contact everybody where there's a line around on a permittable property. So notification, certified mail, and I noticed that people aren't even looking me in the eye right now. That's kind of rude. But we need to do notification to people, have a diverse group when you make these plans, so that it's not just trail folk. And give us the opportunity to be here, because we didn't get notified again.
If I may address one of Ms. Bellantoni's concerns regarding notification, I was actually contacted today by the head of the HOA regarding the trails that are in Dawson Ranch, and she actually said that she was in favor.
And that's a volunteer organization, and,
Okay.
and I have not joined that
Yeah,
organization. So
yeah,
you know what, Councilman Ekstrom, I'm also looking you in the eyes. You're speaking to me.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing.
Angela,
Have a
I
good
had
day.
another question here regarding, well, one of her concerns here regarding the gold lines that are on the map. When we look at those gold lines, are those on city property, or are those on private property?
Mr. Weed?
Yeah, I'm going to just make a comment. I mean, when Dawson Ranch was developed, those trails were built by the developer. TZAC built those trails. It's and well, you know, we had this very same conversation sitting right here, different master plan, but we had the very same conversation. Master plan has no force of law. It gives the city no rights or any entity any legal rights to do anything. It's a visionary document. That's all it is. And if it turns out that there's a yellow line that goes through Dawson Ranch, the city doesn't own that property. And that, like I said, there is no force of law that gives this document and anybody who wants to use this document the ability to force a trail to go someplace where the property owners don't want it. That's as simple as that. And, you know, and the same thing, I mean, the comment in the 4 Mile section, turns out there's a lot of really pretty parts of 4 Mile that are north of the city boundaries. And, you know, the comment was made that, you want it to go on either city or county property. Well, there's a road, and that is city or county property. And that is a way around it, and that's a way to access some of those other properties. I mean, what this really sounds like is, and I mean, I don't mean to be offensive, but maybe I will be. This is a really good case of, I really love this, just not in my backyard. And there is no master plan in the world that everybody agrees with. There's always people who are going to object to one part of it or another part. And if the goal was to get a plan that everybody agreed to, there wouldn't be any master plans, there wouldn't be any vision, we wouldn't get anywhere. So that's what I've got to say on that. And I did look you in the eye the whole time.
Anyone else would like to comment? Please step to the microphone and your name and address.
My name is David Madone, 325 Barrett Avenue, Canyon City. I just came to observe tonight. From a real estate perspective, and I'm a broker here in Canyon City, I am required when marketing a property to disclose anything that is a material fact to the property. And I believe that if you draw a line for a trail through a property for future trails through private property, then I'm required to disclose that to any potential buyer. I also believe that in our seller's property disclosure, there's a clause in there that, and I don't have that in front of me, but it talks about any plans from government agencies or quasi-government agencies. So when you say it doesn't cloud the title, I think that it probably does cloud the title somewhat, because this is a public document and it can be researched. That, in one instance, it could be a benefit to some people or a detriment to some people. I do know people that live on 4 Mile Creek, and the two people that I know that they wouldn't, when I sold the property on one of them, that was an asset that creek ran through the back of their property, and they've got it set up. It's you know, that's where they spend their quiet time, and the property would not, if they would have thought that there was a trail going through there, they wouldn't have been as eager to purchase the property. So I do think that it does cloud the marketability of the property. Thank you.
Ms. Madone?
My understanding that we have two issues with Dawson area and the 4 Mile area. Those are the two.
I don't know if Dawson has issues. I know I've attended board meetings where I've sensed a lot of positivity with the trails. It's an asset that they enjoy. I live in Dawson. I use the trails, and I see many people on them enjoying them quite a bit as an asset and a connection to BLM land.
I met with, thanks to Ashley, I went to the, is it Dawson HOA? On Friday at 3 o'clock and met with those people essentially as a representative of council, and their primary emphasis was, why is council or the city not helping us with our trails? I mean, that took up a big portion of our 45-minute conversation in terms of what do we need to do to get the city more involved in the trail maintenance and development in Dawson Ranch. So that group of people, I don't know what official capacity they are other than I showed up at her house, that was their intention, is to improve the relationship and see what they could do to improve those trails in Dawson Ranch. To the point, I'll say this because they told me, either with or without the city's help, we're going to do it. So their intent is to improve the trails in Dawson Ranch. I don't know how that would conflict with this.
I'd like to see them connect to the BLM land which we're adjacent to. I see there's quite a benefit. And if I understand right, when I wasn't here when the Arkansas Trail was put together, but there was probably similar discussions of angst and frustration with this vision for the Arkansas Trail and perhaps even the hogbacks. But it has been an amazing, incredible asset to our community that is enjoyed tremendously. And I foresee that continuing on through the trail system.
Okay, I think we need to move on. Are there any other comments? And then what are the wishes of council? Any other comments from council?
Is this on the floor to the point that we can offer an amendment?
Well, I suppose you can. You can do anything else.
I would move that we remove project H, which is 4 Mile Creek Trail.
Would that have, does
That's
it
my
need to be
amendment.
seconded first before I have discussion on it?
Is that a motion? Okay.
Would you tell me what you're talking about, H?
Well, on all these plans, each one of those projects have a letter designation, and as I'm understanding it, the 4 Mile project is number H, that has that trail that's in discussion that really doesn't exist.
Oh,
So,
I see, okay. What we're
we
talking
don't even
about
know if
is-
it's gonna be there,
All
so.
right, so you're addressing resolution, these two sheets right here, what the verbiage in the resolution, not in the plan itself. Plan's done.
As I'm-
Remove 4 Mile.
As I'm understanding that Project H is part of this document, so my motion would be to remove of that whole project, of that whole resolution, would be to remove Project H, which is the 4 Mile Creek Trail.
So within a resolution here, you want to add verbiage to remove all,
Just wants to remove it.
remove it from the,
From the resolution.
from the plan of the resolution.
So in essence, you're proposing that the plan be approved with the exclusion of Project H
True.
for city purposes.
Or yay.
I will second that.
Try to summarize that. In the resolution, under
You're gonna
item
have to
B.
talk into the mic, I can't.
Under item B, it talks about how we would amend Project H to sort of say there's a north-south alignment, but it may not be on private property and so on. And what I think you're talking about then is to take that item B and basically say that in the city's plan, our adoption, our version, we are eliminating Project H from future
Entirely.
consideration.
Yes. To amend the resolution to state that.
Might take a rewrite of the thing, but if that's the wish of a majority of council, then my suggestion would be that you direct staff to revise and bring back the resolution to accomplish that purpose.
My logic is that the trail doesn't exist. It's a plan. We don't know whether we can do it. Get rid of it. So we can move forward with the rest of the plan. There seems to be a significant number of property owners in that area, I say seems, that are opposed to that potential plan. We need to move forward with the master.
Mr. Gill?
I'm going with that also, and my main reason for that is I was at that meeting. And there was conversation and an agreement be made that city staff get their phone numbers and have a meeting with them as a group of people. And obviously, that did not happen.
Okay. So let's get down to the basics of the resolution. What we're going to do is ask staff to take it back.
Preston,
Go
what
ahead.
I would suggest, I've disagreed with John here for a minute, that we have a number of things that we have to deal with in terms of the grant for the Royal Gorge and so on. And if we have this stuff in place, whether this Project H is here or not, that's a different point. But certainly this document is going to help us if we want to go forward with those grant applications. That would behoove us to get this done, sooner than later. So my suggestion to you is that if you want to follow Council Miser's approach, that what you do is to say, we adopt this resolution as written, except for under item B. So we have section 1, 2, and then A and B. B would simply say Project H is hereby removed from, the city's approval of the plan. And then the rest of that would get scratched out down to three.
Where's he at?
And that's the only place 4 Mile Creek is mentioned, from B to C.
It'd be another way of doing it. It might be the
That'd be the
better
more
way in
simple
terms
way.
of keeping things moving.
So
Would we still be able to seek grants if we pass it that way? Have we changed it significantly enough by adopting that?
So go forward with the grant that we want to go for.
Could affect grants as to trails in different other places, the Royal Gorge trails.
I'm going to step in here again. This is so close to the same conversation we had when we were talking about the Royal Gorge Master Plan and whether to include or not include the urban growth boundary around the park, on the north side of the park. Again, This is a visionary document. We're talking about, I guess, based on what I heard, 5 property owners who are opposed to this, as opposed to all of the rest of Fremont County.
There's more like 11 or better. It's
Okay.
well over 25,000 acres in representation here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there's 25,000 acres worth of property owners that are involved in somewhat in this. And I don't know to exactly what detail, but that's the understanding I have. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't believe so.
Can I respond?
Sure.
In my mind, one of the differences I see is that it was my understanding that the people at the 8 Mile area or north of the park were in agreement with that plan, where I was opposed to it. I'm understanding here that a good percentage of the property owners for the area affected are not in favor of it. And that's the difference I see between the Royal Gorge plan and this plan, is these people are saying, we don't want that. Whereas up there, they were saying, it's okay, and I was saying no.
So, then, I mean, we're just amending the resolution. We're certainly, this has no effect whatsoever on the master plan. And so, the trail's gonna be built on, I mean, someday the trail's gonna be built. It'll just be built on the road, that's all. And eventually it'll get to BLM land, and then it'll be,
Well, it could also go up 4 Mile Ranch on the other side.
I call the question for the amendment.
I call a question for the amendment. What? Okay, does everybody understand what we're doing here? The question is to eliminate B all the way through to C. So B will go away.
Actually, that's not quite correct. B would be rewritten to say, Project H is hereby removed from the plan, and then all the rest down to 3 would be
Okay,
eliminated.
so B, yeah, B will stay, but the verbiage will say it'll be hereby removed, and then all the other stuff coming after that to C will be removed.
I would accept, yeah, that verbiage is acceptable.
And he's called for.
Do I need to remove that?
No, you called for the question, we got to vote.
Okay, we're gonna, I'm gonna call for the vote.
Till C is gone.
Yes. That's pretty much covers. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
no.
Councilmember Schumacher.
No.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
No.
Councilmember Smith.
No.
Denied by majority vote.
Be like a tie.
All right. Can I make a motion?
I was gonna. I had my
Oh,
hand
Mr.
up.
Ekstrom.
I was
Mr. Ekstrom.
I was going to make a
Scott.
motion. Mr. Mayor and members of council, I move that we approve resolution number 8, series of 2016.
Second.
Does everybody understand the motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Nay.
Councilmember Gill.
Nay.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Approved by majority vote.
Okay, let's move on to 10A. Is a public hearing for a zone change at 731 Woodlawn Avenue. And I'm going to hereby open the public hearing. Could I have the staff report from city planner?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members. This is a public hearing for a zone change request. The applicant is Angela Bellantoni and Lynn Wetters. They're asking for a zone change at 731 Woodlawn Avenue, which is lots 1, 2, and 3, block 13 of Harding's addition, from R1 low-density residential to R2 medium density. Notice was posted on the property and published at least 15 days prior to this public hearing as required. The applicant wishes to redevelop this corner lot by replacing the current structure with a duplex for rental purposes. R1 and R2 zoning are very similar. R1 allows single-family residences. R2 allows those plus duplexes, and a list of those uses is in your packet for comparison. The applicant has provided justification in their application, and they have stated that the area for which rezoning is requested has changed or is changing to such a degree that it is in the public interest to encourage a redevelopment of the area. Staff concurs with that recommendation. The parcel is adjacent to current R2 zoning, as shown in your staff report, and the parcel also meets all of the minimum requirements. It meets the size, the width, and the frontage that is required. Staff supports the zone change. The Planning Commission heard this at their regular meeting on the 17th of February. All members were present. They discussed it, and the minutes of the meeting are in your packet as well. They recommended approval of the zone change in a unanimous vote. Their findings of fact and advisory report are included in the staff packet. If I can answer any questions for you, I will try. And the applicant is here.
Okay, could I have comments from the applicant? You're the applicant, Angela.
Yes.
Any comments from you?
No, I think Ms. Bernath did a great job. I have pictures of showing the current structure if you haven't already done a drive-by.
Any questions of council?
Yep.
We?
Just real quick. By changing the zoning, the only use by right that we are adding is for a two-family dwelling. And then there's two added special review uses that would have to come before us anyhow. So in essence, we're just allowing two-family and adjacent to it and across the street, everywhere it's R2. So that's it.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Smith?
So as Terry and I have been working on a committee to address homes that are old and need to be torn down and the complications involved in getting that done from the city, it's great to have an opportunity where the private property owner is already making plans to tear down old buildings and replace it with something that is an asset and will address our needs for lower income housing. And so it's nice that this is a situation that can be fixed so well.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Mr. Havens?
A question for Dr. Bellantoni, and that is, do you agree with the recommendation of Planning Commission in this matter?
Yes, I do.
The record. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Would you like to see pictures of the property, or have you already done drive-bys?
I'm
The
good.
drive-by.
And congratulations, that property leans a little.
Will you be living in that current house?
I will be living in my current house.
Okay, I just.
Angela, you know what this reminds me of? The movie Alice's Restaurant and the 27 8x10 color glossary photographs. Do you really want to show us your pictures?
She only has two.
Okay, we're going astray here, unfortunately.
Digressing.
We're digressing. Any comments?
Hopefully you've seen that movie. Sorry, Mayor.
You're timed
No,
out, Mr. Weed.
I'm not that old.
Nice try.
There we go. How does he do that? How do you do that?
He's the IT dude.
Light. Patrick.
I believe at this point, the curiosity of the council has been taken care of. I'm losing my audience. Seeing this isn't very controversial. And I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And we need to call for a motion. No? Oh. Then we'll move on to 10B, which is ordinance number 4, series of 2016. I need 3 to introduce: Mr. Ekstrom, Mr. Weed, and Mr. Meisner. Would you please read by title?
This is a bill for ordinance number 4, series of 2016, an ordinance rezoning certain real property within the city of Canyon City, Colorado, more specifically 731 Woodlawn Avenue.
I have a motion from council in a second. Mr. Ekstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we go ahead and approve a zone change for 731 Woodlawn from R1 low density to R2 medium density on first reading.
We passed the ordinance on first reading, right?
I'll second.
I think Mr. Schumacher seconded. Any discussions on the motion? Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, then we agree we're going to have an executive session, so I'm going to hereby adjourn to the executive no?
Need a motion.
We need a motion, then we'll go into executive session. Do I hear a motion? Mr. Ekstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council go into executive session in accordance with section 24-6, 4024F of the Colorado Revised Statutes for the purpose of discussing the reappointment and compensation of the city's appointed officers. During such executive session, the city council may confer with the city attorney for purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions regarding the city charter and other provisions of city law pertaining to the city's appointed officers, as permitted by CRS section 24-6, 4024B. No action is expected to follow this executive session.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Weed. Any discussion about the motion? Go ahead, have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, we'll go into executive session.